Hi there. My name is Scott Kolbe, and I'm with Market Your Craft. I want to say thanks first to Andrew and Amanda and Craft Beer Professionals, plus all their sponsors for making this possible. Today, we're going to talk about growth marketing and is it going to be the savior of the brewing industry? Let's get the scary slide out of the way first. So, beer is mature. There's been a decrease in production. It's flat market share. We're down the number of breweries. Tariffs are crazy right now, both inputs and outputs. Rise in beer prices, low margin for brewers, and alternatives to beer are all keeping us awake at night. Now, as a marketer, I've told myself that I need to market in the good times and the bad, because in the good times, you build volume and awareness. And in the bad, you hopefully build a little bit of loyalty and momentum. Now, it's kind of like systematic investing for your 401k. All things being equal, you generally see a rise, but we can't even count on that anymore. This is unprecedented times. There's no two ways to look at it. There's a lot of uncertainty, and this is necessarily going to impact buyer behavior. But as brewery owners, we can't stick our heads in the sand. We have to act quickly. We have to act decisively. And we know from Bart Watson and the Brewers Association's recent visit to DC that now we've got a seat at the table, and hopefully we can start to really act some change. Now, what about closer to home? How can marketing help get us out of this mess? So let's take a quick look at some of the strategies and tactics that we've used in the past in preparation for where we are today. Now, this is our chart. It's not anything that's historically accurate. It's our take on grouping together the marketing trends that have gotten us here. And you could start with what we might call the product age from 1990s to about 2005, where we were all trying to build the craft industry. We were all in. Now transition to about 2005 to maybe 2016 or so, where we might call it the events age. And the events age was trying to get liquid to lips, as many lips as possible, building brand awareness. Again, there's enough competition that you wanted to set yourself apart from your neighbor and not necessarily promoting the industry in general. And then there's the social age. It's undeniable. 2016 to maybe about 2023. Some would argue it's still there today. I might argue that it's on its way out, or at least significantly decreased for the younger ages, the younger LDAs, where we were all trying to build relevance. We were trying to be the cool kid on the beer block. We were using social media in all its various forms, definitely leaning into video, trying our toe with influencers and these kind of engagement metrics versus sales. But where are we today? Everybody's talking about data and using it strategically to help us rebound. But what does that practically mean to breweries? People are calling it growth marketing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You don't need a PhD in statistics. You don't need to have AI crunch the numbers necessarily for you. We want to make sure you understand what it is, because one, if you're in a position to execute it yourself and do so at a high level of performance, you will grow your brewery business. Or if you work with outside partners or agencies, you'll know what to look for if they pitch this to you. Our goal is always to give brewers, owners, and managers the tools that they need to win. It's a weird time, but it's always weird for craft. We're always kind of the underdog. We're fighting below our weight. Now, we want for you to understand the components of growth marketing so you can spot them either in your own efforts or the gap in what you should be doing. We're going to talk a little bit about market your craft. market your craft. We offer fractional leadership and strategy, and we just like to talk. We like to talk to folks and help them understand what options that they have and how to get themselves through this. We've got a sweet spot in storytelling and planning and automation. That's always fun for us. We've got 20 years in the business across wine and spirits and non-alc and functional. And we even tried our hand at assistant brewing at BJ's. That was me. And personally, I'm part owner in a brewery in Iowa. So I'm deeply invested in the space and, of course, super excited about it. We've worked with a number of fun brands, anywhere from the Sierra Nevadas to guilds to associations. Like I said, Jim Beam, we helped with a Starbucks launch, Maker's Mark, one of our favorite bourbons. All to say that you might be in one beverage vertical or the other, but the fundamentals of successful storytelling are the same. We're also working with an amazing company called Tapwise. The folks, Ross and Natalie and the team at Tapwise, they really gave us insights as to how mobile will be the future of direct communication to drinkers. You've heard us talk in previous conversations about digital and email and public relations and kind of the blocking and tackling of marketing. It really wasn't until talking with Ross and just seeing his passion did we recognize mobile app as one of the 4 vital components of a successful marketing strategy for a brewery. There's no doubt about it. They offer push notifications, digitizing your offline mug club, membership opportunities, all push and other kind of offerings to give the drinker everything that they need to engage with the brand right there in their hand. You can always visit tapwise.com for more information. And also, if you're going to be at CBC this week, check them out. They've got a booth. Let's talk about growth marketing. Growth marketing, it's really at its core just using the insights that you have available to be smarter about selling, smarter about marketing. So the idea itself is not new. However, what is new is maybe the bottom-up approach that we're going to take in order to get it right for your brewery. It's completely within your reach to execute. Again, you could have a strategy partner on the outside, like an agency, somebody helping you. You could also, with your team internally, really take a thoughtful, systematic approach to getting this done yourself. But we're going to look at all the components, the ones that we would prioritize for you, and also the ones that you might have as nice to haves. So let's get started. The first part of this is studying your foundation. It's getting the basics right for your brewery. Some of these aren't going to sound sexy, but man, are they important. I can't tell you how often we talk to a brewery client or prospect or just friends in the industry who don't have their systems set up to be able to mine their data. We would call it optimization and segmentation. And that's a fancy way of saying, when you gather data, can you use it to your benefit? Can you use it to have a better relationship, a more engaging relationship with your drinker? Can you use it to prompt action, create conversions? Can you use it to drive revenue and traffic? You might have a great system for POS like Arrived, or you might use MailChimp, let's say, for email services. All of these systems working together collect various points of data that can be used for some really strategic and targeted marketing, but only if it's easy to access. So do an audit, just start asking some basic questions and then see what data you have available to answer it. You might find that there's opportunities for segmentation. You could send a slightly different email message or push notification to those fans who like light lagers, or those people who come only on Mondays, or who really only appreciate the events. When you start to know more about your customer, you start to market or talk to them maybe slightly differently, and that's going to prompt them to take more action. Research and analysis, again, not super sexy, but so important. It's really just identifying where the white space is for your brewery, the opportunity for you to not go head to head with the bigger players in the market. Even if they're friends, they're still competing for market share and for share of mouth. Find the white space by doing a little bit of research, understanding where your competitors are so that you can find places that they aren't. And like the example we used before, Pilsners did this a couple years ago. Light lagers, a customer focus would say, man, we just need something a little lighter. These IPAs are super heavy and they're bombs in terms of hops. And so I just want something that I can drink 2 or 3 of and not have to Uber home. Light lagers turned kind of the trend towards a little more sessionable drinking. It's listening to the customer and figuring out what makes them tick and offering up something. Again, some of our presentations in the past might focus too heavily on this, and it's brand positioning. Because if you don't have a brand position, you can't tell a story, in my opinion. You can talk around your brand, you can throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but if you really take the time now, don't wait another day. If you take the time to understand what your brand is to you and to your customers, and you can develop a story around that, then all of your marketing efforts will use that story as a filter for success. And all of your efforts will align and kind of rise up to the brand positioning. So you're sending a consistent message. And when you have that kind of consistency, you build momentum. When you build momentum, you have sales. We have done this with brands in the past where we've done a complete workshop. And it could be a day, it could be an hour. It really doesn't matter. We just get brands talking about what they do well, what their origin story is, their competitors in the market, where they have unique advantages. A lot of these things you have access to. You just need to formalize it. We actually had some fun. We put an AI chatbot up on our website and we taught it how to tell brand stories. And so if you go to our website, if you're looking for some inspiration, it'll prompt you to enter some of your information, your origin story, your advantages, your competitors, what your ideal and your current customers look like. And then it comes back basically and gives you some thought starters on really how to tell your story and what brand positioning you can use for your marketing efforts. A little bit of fun with AI. Now, this is a nice to have, speaking of tech, but auditing your tech stack is also very important. What we've seen is kind of this Frankenstein pieced together setup where you've got a bunch of different systems that answered the question at the time that I needed it, but I didn't really have the resources or the expertise to integrate it into my existing system. And so they're all desperate. And when you're disparate, they don't necessarily talk to each other. Just take a look at your tech stack and see if there's any opportunity to create some efficiencies. Because how much time can we save during a week if we're not logging into 5 different systems, maybe to do redundant tasks? And the next area we're going to talk about is activating your markets. Really creating opportunities to sell. Sounds pretty straightforward, and it is, but there's still some strategy there that we should be really rooting our marketing in. Digital website strategy, a lot of people don't have one. If you were to be formal about it, sure, it's nice. It's nice to know what direction your website or any of your digital advertising or where you're going, not just throwing up a website and hoping that it creates traffic for your brewery. We like to do just a quick audit to see if the website answers questions. What beers do you have? Why are you different? Why should I care? Can I see myself sitting at the tasting room? What options do I have? Can I bring my friends? Just ask the questions of your website and see if it answers. If it doesn't, then now is the time to switch it up and to answer the questions, to feed it with more content, to make it more relevant. Website is never one and done. You don't just put it up there and hope that the world doesn't change so that your website doesn't have to keep up. We like refreshes and updates at least every quarter. We're not talking about extra work. We're just talking about a little thoughtfulness. So see your website as a destination, just like your tasting room, and how inviting is it for new guests. We like tap list, like live tap lists. We like the idea of a social feed, your story right at the very top, any merch that you have, contact information, even right there on the front, have your team members. We try and promote having 80% of the value on your homepage, because if you look at the Google stats, not very many people are going much deeper than your homepage. Social media, I'm sure a lot of you folks could probably school us on this because you use it so well, but have a strategy, have a plan, have a content calendar. We like using social media, but we don't think that social media is the end all be all. I think it complements, it's part of a really solid marketing strategy for breweries, which likely includes a POS system, email, social, digital, and a good branded mobile app. So social can be a time suck unless you find the efficiencies. We like Sprout Social. I know you've heard us talk about it before. We're a big fan. Sprout Social, you can basically log in once and push your post to all of the platforms formatted for that platform. And then you have a singular source of reporting and listening and monitoring your competitors for, again, those niche opportunities. And then there's Tapwise. You're going to see throughout this presentation organically where it makes sense to really have a custom branded mobile app for your brewery. Some breweries are getting a little frustrated with social. Social's not the golden child that it once was in terms of driving immediacy and action for your brewery. And so we like the idea of a branded mobile app through Tapwise where you can really have those direct communications between brewery and phone. And again, it's easy to administer on the back end. You can do so for groups, for individuals, in order to really motivate them to act. Having a content calendar and a strategy is a necessity nowadays. I can't tell you how many people we work with, and they say, man, I have no idea what to write about this week for socials or any of the different platforms. I've got to put together a blog and I'm not sure who to talk about. If you take the time up front, maybe at the beginning of the month, maybe twice a month, whatever it takes to really meet with somebody from operations, meet with the head brewer, meet with somebody from the tasting room, and just talk for half hour, whatever it takes, in order for you to understand exactly what they are going through and what's kind of hot on their minds. And then you could share with them in return. When everybody's on the same page about what the month looks like, then it's very easy to create a calendar of content and messaging to support that. Nice to haves. You know that we love public relations, but it's not for everybody. Really, we could tell you that it only takes an hour or so to put together a really good one-page press release, and it takes a little bit of time to curate a media-friendly list for journalists and local publications that might like your story. It's free. You don't have to pay for press releases, but it's not for everybody. So we would put this on the nice to haves, assuming that, again, if you have some interest in this, then perhaps you've already got a template and it's just a matter of maybe quarterly press releases to those media friendlies. It's incredible. Journalists are looking for stories to tell, and they're also looking for, a good heartfelt brewery story. So that being said, kind of falls second on the list. Lead generation is more of a CPG thing. Like if you were to see that in a deck from an agency, or if you were to be reading about growth marketing and they talk about lead gen is important, right? It's about driving traffic. We look at brewery lead generation as more brand awareness and making sure that new drinkers see themselves having a beer at your place. Lead gen feels a scientific and software as a service and kind of outside the scope of your brewery's day to day. Engaging your audience should seem pretty straightforward. We want our drinkers to be happy. We always do. We want them to enjoy a beer because then they'll come back. Certainly, we get that. However, there's a little more thought and science that could go into this, and we would encourage breweries to, put on a different hat and think, well, how can I control the experience from start to finish? Let's give an example. So, tasting room, they have to get there. What's the experience they have with social media or a mobile app that brings them to the brewery? What's the experience that they have when they walk in? How about the seating? Is it easy to order? Is it easy to pay? What's the environment? We'll talk about tasting room engineering in a little bit, but all the way through to, I want to take a 6-pack home with me, or I'm going to remember this brewery in the future so that I can buy you at retail. And when I buy you at retail, maybe there's a QR code, and the QR code gives a deeper experience with beer descriptions and pairings. All this to say that experience engineering is important, especially nowadays, because the beer that you make, the environment in which you serve that beer, or the packaging, and the experience that a guest or a drinker has with your product will necessarily plant in their brain whether or not they want to do it again. And it happens unconsciously, and it happens in an instant. So to the extent you can control that arc of experience, you're going to have them for another drink. Something that we all know is the 19.2 ounce stovepipe. That mainly came about because of hospitality and convenience stores, but this was kind of a practical example of a brewery engineering the experience, giving slightly more volume for nominal increase in cost. Content development. we talked on the front side about content calendars. Content development on the back side is really executing that calendar using all the different channels available to you. And we're not saying to shotgun it. We're actually suggesting to be very thoughtful about the media that you use. It's not every social media channel. It might be 2 or 3 of them. It's not advertising on every platform. It might be strategic advertising on 1 or 2. When you're creating the content, you don't have to be a graphic artist. You don't have to be a pro videographer, although I certainly like to dip my toe in creating movies. Try and use some of these tools that are available to you, like a Canva or Adobe Express. They offer content suggestions, templates, limitless frames, all sized appropriately for the ultimate display. So use those tools that are available to you, and remember that video is still king or queen. Community building, you could call it, the extension of social. You could call it extension of your tasting room experience, the personality of your brand. It's an opportunity for the customers themselves to raise their hand and say, I'm interested in more. I want a different relationship. I want a closer relationship with your brewery. Now, when they're self-selecting, boy, you're in a great spot, because they're hand raisers and they want to sell, or they want to buy more. They want to spend more money. And so using that to your advantage, you can either create formal and informal programs that allow you to really celebrate their status, maybe give them slightly more discounts, opportunities for events. There are a lot of perks and incentives that you could offer to these folks. Another opportunity with Tapwise. Now, the breweries that are using Tapwise, they have access to a membership feature. Remember when we talked about the digitization of your mug club? Well, you can create memberships within your custom branded mobile app, and those memberships can be paid for through the app. They can be renewed through the app. They can be redeemed through the app. Just imagine the efficiencies that you gain when you don't have to manage an offline paper version of your relationship with these folks. And some of these brewers using Tapwise have seen a nearly immediate 10 to 20K bump in annual recurring revenue. It's not chump change. We're talking about the kind of dollars that pay for the service well over. So take a look at community building. The back end of that is the community experience that you have in the tasting room. And really, like we talked about with experience engineering before, tasting room engineering is very similar. It's trying to imagine your tasting room experience as a drinker, as a customer walking in the front door. Boy, we've talked in the past about staging. Just like you're going to stage your house to sell it, staging your brewery for guests is just as important. And we like the idea of making it easy for people to see themselves enjoying a beer with their friends, having a social experience, or having a very individual kind of unwind and reset experience. You need to accommodate both. You can't be so far down one path that you actually ostracize or push away those people who aren't interested in that type of brewery experience. So think about the music that you use, the decorations. It's not your clubhouse. It's actually for them. You want them to have a better experience than you necessarily as an owner. We certainly hope that both can be satisfied, but You don't have to have your high school letter jacket hanging up on the wall. I still have mine. Nice to haves. Acquisition strategy is something you might hear. Again, it's a little bit like lead gen, and acquisition strategy is taking the more scientific or engineering approach to the funnel. People talk about the funnel, sales funnel, with your prospects and leads and taking them through various stages of awareness and trial and conversion. And all of this is very good. And maybe some of the mid to bigs, maybe they are looking a little more strategically about the acquisition strategy, specifically with respect to retail and accounts versus the end drinker. But most breweries aren't looking at their drinkers, their customers, as members of a funnel or a journey. There's plenty of room to engineer their marketing experience, but we don't have to over-engineer things, make things seem too stale or too sterile. Tiered value creation. I mean, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you may have taken a look at a loyalty program and segmented people based on behavior and provided different incentives to go up a level and threatened to take people or kick people out of a level for lack of performance. And this just isn't the spirit or ethos of a brewery, not small to mids. But again, providing service and providing rewards could be very applicable to a small to mid-sized brewery, especially if you have something digital or a mobile app or your point of sale system to help you execute that, because then it just happens. It happens automatically. You don't necessarily have to formalize a program to reward your guests. Like we talked about with loyalty, POS systems like Arrived or Square or Toast, or others that you may be using, they have loyalty built in to a greater or lesser degree. Remember that they are point of sale systems and they are meant to facilitate transactions first, not necessarily to give the customer a warm, fuzzy feeling and reward them for their behavior or their loyalty or for visiting. This is why we like to find the best in class point of sale system for your needs. When we've done this in the past, we've helped breweries figure out which point of sale system is right for them, but we haven't necessarily used loyalty as additional criteria for selection. This can come after. This can be a little less systematized, or if you have great opportunity with your mobile app or some other feature of your website to recognize this kind of loyalty and, again, make it easy for people to redeem their rewards on site. Because it's all about sales. We really don't do this for any other reason. We can make great beer that we ourselves would drink a ton of, but we market because we want others to know that a great beer exists. And if that marketing isn't creating sales, then it's not doing its job. I mean, I'm a marketer, and I just said that marketing and sales have to work so closely together, so closely, because it's not us versus them. It's finding a way to create the most efficiencies because we're all doing more with less. And one of those efficiencies is a strategic partnership. We're going to talk about collaborations in a minute. This is more, at a higher level, the strategic partnerships that you need to grow. Now, whether that's your footprint for self-distribution, if it's taking that leap and getting your first distributor partnership, going multi-state and having to look at a network of distributors, regional, nationwide, global. I mean, good on you if you have that last one in your back pocket. But these strategic partnerships are extremely important, and being very thoughtful about how and when you enter into these kind of relationships, you always want to align with the partners that have your best interests in mind. And man, I mean, the work we've done with distributors, it's a love hate relationship. If you have a good distributor that you have given the right amount of information and the materials needed for them to succeed, and they return with sales and focus when they have 20, 30 brands in their portfolio, then you've won. That's why it's nice to have those strategic partnerships that you can count on. Because trade development, really exploring and exploding that channel, that relationship, if you've gone there, if you've started a relationship with a distributor, giving them everything that they need to win is of critical importance. We've been lucky enough to sit in on distributor presentations where, man, regional sales rep just wows them, gives them the talking points about the new releases, talks about community driven efforts, talks about the investment made in a market like Denver, Colorado. When you get them excited in that moment, you certainly have their attention. But it's continuing that conversation. It's continuing to provide touch points with the brand that keeps you top of mind, because somebody else is going to follow your presentation, maybe even that same day, with something equally enticing. And so, how do you keep their attention? They are your extended sales force. Again, a strategic partnership worth pursuing. Value added services. If you were to see this in a deck or a trade publication where they say you need to go above and beyond the sale, you need to service after the fact. Well, depending on your resources, you may do that already. But the thought is that at whatever level you're selling, whether it's a local footprint, selling through distributors, regional, national, trying to create pull ultimately with the retailers and the drinkers starts with having good relationships throughout the chain. And if one of your sales reps stops in a half hour early to a local restaurant where you're on tap and offers to clean the lines, I mean, this is great. This is perfect. It's not something they have to do, but it's something that strategically they calculate to help, win more business. Hey, I remember Scott came and he cleaned the lines the other day. It's not necessarily going to make me buy more beer. It's not going to make the beer that I have on tap run out any faster. But when I have choices, I have a choice and I have a tendency to lean towards those people who help me out. It's still a relationship-based business. Can you legally or operationally digitize parts of your business? Can you enable it for online selling? There's your own website, whether or not that's, again, Arrived or Shopify, or if it's Toast or Square. A lot of point of sale systems could enable online selling through the website. They have, greater or lesser online shopping carts. That's one thing. It's usually for curbside pickup. You might have a B2B platform. That could be like Provi, or a delivery service like Reserve Bar or Instacart or such. These are available to you, and it's extra. We like it as a priority because if you can do it, then it just improves your awareness and reach to people outside of your immediate geography. It's definitely worth pursuing. And then if you get to this level, maybe with your distributor partners, you might even be looking at big box, like making it available on Target or at Walmart, Amazon for non-alcoholic products. Now we're to the nice to haves. Nice to have. We like the idea of automation because it creates efficiency, and it's not always easy and it's not always clean. But if I can reduce a step for a brewery that amounts to 5 minutes a day, half hour, an hour a week, that time is gold for breweries and operators. And if we have that chance, we're going to try and make that recommendation of, hey, make it a little easier, have this auto update, or have one source of truth for your customer data. And you'll see that if you're not already getting pitched on this, that this kind of automation is hot right now. We have it as a nice to have because sometimes it's ugly to integrate and to create that efficiency, but it's time well spent if you can. Sales process development, a lot of times we don't have the luxury of controlling the end-to-end process of sales. And whether that's because we use agents or brokers, or maybe we use distributor partners, we have a much wider net. All we can hope to do, in our opinion, is to best outfit those people with the information that they need to keep you top of mind and to win at retail. Knowing what the process is definitely important. Being able to influence it sometimes is a little more difficult. Market development. It's important. It's on our nice to haves because a lot of times breweries aren't thinking this way. You can think holistically about, I want to be in another city, I want to be in another state, or I want to be multi-state. And that's market development. But the way that it's being positioned in kind of a growth marketing and sales development halo is you need to squeeze every bit of opportunity out of this market before you move on to another market. You need to exhaust all your leads. You need to heavy hit and double down on all those visits that you make to the retailer, and however much that you need to be top of mind with the distributors. That's just as many times as you're going to visit their warehouse. It's aggressive. It's kind of the heavy-handed side of sales. Again, it's nice to have because you're thinking ahead. Might be a little too much for the mid to or small to mids. And sales tool creation, we like decks. We like to see visuals. Sometimes you're even able to do shelf talkers and point of sale stuff, merch. Those are important, but a lot of times it's out of reach budget-wise, mainly for the small to mids. If you have the luxury of it, it certainly helps you stay top of mind with your distributor partners and ultimately the retailers that'll benefit from those incentives and contests and things like that. In a client success program, it's always good to know if you're winning with your distributors, ultimately with your retailers. But this is more so, this is a deeper level of analytics and Nielsen and IQ data that maybe small to mids don't have access to readily. Best we can do, and what we recommend, is to just have monthly report dashboards on sales, see where you're winning, see where you need to double down, see where you have risks, and then course correct. Regionalize and localize. We're in the final stretch. Local partnerships, collaborations, very, very important. But think of collaborations bigger. Think of collaborations not just with brewery partners, but with local businesses. Businesses that might align with your mission, might align with kind of your philosophy, or the easy one is aligns obviously with your geography. And if you're both in the same suburb, then there's a natural fit for people. But when you think strategically at a deeper level with these partnerships, you evaluate whether or not you should get into them based on what you're going to get out of the partnership. Now, another brewery might have additional tap room visitors that you haven't accessed yet. The Venn diagram of that, there might not be very much overlap, or maybe there is. But think about a humane society, or think about a local community organization. That's an untapped, potentially, source of new drinkers. And the opportunity to cross-promote each is really there when you do a collaboration with somebody outside the industry. Having a strategy for your events is crucial. Time is not limitless. Budget is not limitless. Good friends of ours, Pierce at Common House Ale Works and Park Circle, South Carolina, they're always doing events, and they're always partnering with the community, and they celebrate that. That's part of their DNA. That's part of their brand story, and they want people to know. And so they get rewarded for supporting the community. You don't have to think about it in a strategic or kind of a salesy, aggressive way like that. When you do right by the community with events, they will do right by you. And this is proven day in and day out with Common House. Nice to have. If you're big enough that you can template your events, we're talking about tours and things like this. You can template your events so that they're easy to replicate in different metros, different markets, so that you're introducing your brand in a relevant, local feeling way, far away from the brewery, then that's great. But most small to mids don't necessarily have that opportunity or limitless amount of printing your own cash. Revenue optimization, again, you might see it in a deck. And in theory, it makes good sense. But a lot of times when you're sponsoring an event, you're not necessarily thinking about the dollars and cents that you're going to get out of it. I think it's a calculated risk of making sure sometimes that you're present within the community. Sometimes you're checking a box. Sometimes you're using it as a more strategic brand building or awareness play. All those things are fine, but getting down into the kind of formula of whether or not an event makes sense, most of us don't go there. Marketing and program integration. If you've got something going on at the tap room and you've got a content calendar and you have an event schedule and you have a new release schedule, tell your extended network about it. And I'm not talking about your drinkers. I'm talking about your partners at retail, distributor partners. If they know that all of this is going on at the brewery, then they are going to be more likely to incorporate that into their sale, whether it's a distributor to a retailer talking about just how active they are in the community, a retailer to a drinker who walks in and says, "Hey, I want a local IPA. You have any suggestions?" Well, yeah, actually I do, because this particular brand is doing a lot with the community. They've got a surf event coming up in the next couple of weeks. You should really try it. Again, it gives the retailer something to talk about. As far as a corporate program, we don't really see the need to formalizing these kinds of efforts, your community involvement and such. Best maybe that you would do is decide on a charity or a donation partner, and you could do a 1% back kind of deal and celebrate that in a meaningful, authentic way on your website. Tell people about it at the tasting room. Hey, did you know? Actually, if you buy this beer this month, we're giving 1% back to this charity or this GoFundMe. Those types of programs are completely inbounds for small to mids, but a more formal relationship that's multi-year and probably more costly is likely out of bounds. Make sure that every event that you have, on-site or off-site, represents your brand. If it's outfitting the pours at GABF, or if it's making sure that the right hats and the right talking points are there at a sponsored festival or something like this, just give the team every opportunity to best represent your brand, because they're a representation of you, whether or not they're part-time or they're there full-time. And then it's about scale. When you take a look at all these different components of a successful, high-performing growth marketing plan and strategy, how do you continue to learn and make them better? Because just like we said with the website, this is not a one and done, set it and forget it. This is an opportunity for you to put in place the fundamental, the building blocks of a strong marketing and sales development strategy, and then build on them over time. But the only way that you can make them better is if you learn, you tweak, you try again, you test, you learn, you tweak, you do something slightly different. So we like taking a look at, overall how things are going, kind of that dashboard, finger on the pulse of how the brewery's faring every 3 to 6 months. And that's what you'll see, in an effective, successful growth marketing approach. We can't always plan for the future. As marketers, I know we like to go in and say, a campaign isn't 2 weeks, a campaign is 2 years, and you're not going to build the kind of awareness or calls to action that you're really expecting in just a month. You need to invest in it for the 6 to 12 months, and only then you get this. But as an owner, as a manager, as somebody in a decision-making position for the team, you have the unique opportunity to set a vision and a goal for the people who work with and for you. And to the extent that you're able, even in times like this, that every single day there's something going on that could potentially impact either you as a brewer, the cost of doing business, or a drinker's disposable income. Stay flexible, but stay focused on the future. Nice to haves. Anniversary planning. If you've got this relationship with a drinker, it's very easy to execute. You started drinking with us 12 months ago. Happy anniversary. You get 50% off your beer. A little more difficult is to look at your own business on an annual rotating basis. And really, just like we talked about with program optimization, what can we do as a business? We like to ask ourselves the question like, okay, it's your birthday. What did you like about last year? Or what would you carry forward? Or what would you gladly leave behind? Well, the same thing is true for a brewery. Ask yourself what worked well in the last year, what didn't work so well. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just move forward, but move forward thoughtfully. And then just continue to grow, because that's the point of this. We went over a lot today. We got through it. The point again was growth marketing. It's a term you may have heard, data-driven, thinking strategically about your business. All of these catchphrases are are circling around right now as a way to get us out of the mess that we're in, the declines, the scary slide that we talked about at the very beginning. What we wanted to do was take a look at what growth marketing looks like, practically speaking, for a brewery. What we have here are the highlighted areas that we touched on. What's not highlighted was the nice to haves. And you see that you could do this. 40% of what you might be pitched from an agency or what you might read about, 40% gets you to where you need to be from a marketing and a sales development side. That's completely within your reach. Key takeaways from today. It's more than just big data. You hear about big data being the savior. No, it's far more fundamental and basic than that. Prioritize audits, do them occasionally, be objective, and then come up with those thoughtful strategies as a result of the insights you gained. Look for ways to build community with your drinkers. If I were to make any suggestion about here's the one thing, any of your marketing efforts should lend itself to this. Finding ways to connect directly with drinkers and cause them to take action. Building community is something that lasts. We're not always loyal because there are a lot of choices out there, but I'll tell you what, I'm sure to visit a brewery that makes me feel like I'm part of a community more often than not. And then take a test and learn mindset about it. As always, anybody who saw this presentation, we're happy to give away the store. If you want, please visit Market Your Craft. You can download one of our guides, which talk about a number of these different areas, the fundamentals of successful marketing. Download a guide for free. Reach out to us if we can start a conversation about helping you to understand growth marketing and how it applies to your business. And with that, I really want to thank Andrew, Amanda, Craft Beer Professionals, and their sponsors, again, for having this chance to talk today. Certainly wish you the best, and keep your spirits up. It's a weird time, but we'll get through it. Cheers.